Ladies and gentlemen, Geri Petito.
I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. And in time, this too shall pass. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. Geri Petito taught the class. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. Loves the answer, the greener grass. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. One day at a time, free at last.
When you don't know just what to do,
Just what to do, just what to do.
if what you're feeling is really true,
Is it really true? Is it really true?
just keep your ideas safe and sound.
Safe and sound, safe and sound.
That's exactly how change is found.
Change is found, change is found. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. And in time, this too shall pass. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. Geri Petito taught the class. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. Loves the answer, the greener grass. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. One day at a time, free at last.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Geri Petito Show. Everyone and anyone who knows me knows I am the author of I'm Not an Addict, I'm Just an Ass. I'd rather be a smart ass than a dumbass. Because, guys, 34 years ago, I was a dumbass. But today, 34 years later, through the grace of God, I can honestly say now I'm a smart ass. And yes, the word ass is in the Bible at least 40 times, and it means donkey, and that's what I was. I'm saying all that to say this. There are a lot of people out there struggling. I'm a nutritional health coach. I'm a recovery coach. All my services to you are free. Please, please reach out. I'm here to help you. If you think my book can help someone, because I sure do, you can go right to Simon & Schuster's bookstore, Archway Publishing, BAM, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can go to my website, www.geripetito.com. My book is now on audio, guys, with my voice. Simon & Schuster wanted to do it with someone else's voice. I was like, absolutely not. So my producer, part owner of Hamilton Radio, owner of Iron Horse Films, Ruben Rodriguez, is now doing audiobooks with your voice, guys. So if anyone's interested, please, please reach out. And guys, listen, if you truly, truly, truly cannot afford my book, please reach out to me about that as well. I'm here to help you. I need to give a shout out to a few of my sponsors before I introduce my really cool guests. My newest sponsor, guys, is Robert Sweeney. Explore powerful stories of love, loss, and legacy through my music and videos and on YouTube and Spotify. Let's bring these emotional and thought-provoking tales to life. Robert Sweeney is a U.S. Air Force, retired. Okay, so thank him for our service, right? He's a one-man band, guitar player, writer, producer, AI digital creator, okay? And he made me an AI theme song that we're going to be playing at the end of the show. He's also working on the Jersey Devil movie based off of the song he created. Okay? So what he's doing is really, really incredible. All right? He created and made computers in the service. So he knows what he's doing. And I interviewed him this week, and it was really cool. So we'll be playing that song at the end. Then we've got John Bishop, a.k.a. Johnny B., singer-songwriter, host of the Entertainment Luncheon South, a nonprofit network created for the creative. Guys, he's also in the Joey D and Johnny B. Rockin' Oldies band. He's also solo, but I must give him and his wife, Linny, a shout-out for this luncheon they do once a month. It's by invite only, $20. You get a great lunch, and you get incredible entertainment, and they don't keep a penny of it, guys, and they promote all of us like nobody else does. So a huge shout out to both of them. You know how I feel about you. Then we've got Michael Zanman, singer, entertainer, performer, www.mzanman.com. So guys, listen, please keep Michael in prayer. His cancer has returned. He's doing a lot better, but please keep him in prayer. So a really cute little Michael Zanman story. So a while ago, he sang and put on Facebook, Mel Carter told me, thrill me, kiss me. He recorded it. So he didn't know it, but I sent it to my buddy Mel. Mel calls me and says, Geri, your boy did a great job with my song. I said, can you tell him? Well, we got him on a surprise three-way. He almost fell off the chair. That would be like Elvis calling me, guys, okay? So really, really cool. And then today, last but not least, John Monforto, the man of many faces, singer, actor, celebrity impersonator, and tribute artist. So I gave him the title, the man of many faces, but he was given the title by a former Philadelphia mayor as the official Philadelphia Rocky impersonator. Guys, he is Rocky. He does over 30, incredible. My three favorites, of course, Rocky, The Godfather, and of course, Elvis. Thank you. Thank you very much. www.johnmumfordo.com. Okay, so I just want to say thank you to all my sponsors. And now I want to introduce two of my really cool guests. One is no stranger to Hamilton Radio or the Geri Petito Show. Mike Messner, say hello.
Hello, Jerry, and hello, everybody at Hamilton Radio. It's great to be back and to be talking to a good friend of mine, Geri Petito, and my tag team partner in Baltimore.
So your tag team partner in Baltimore. So Claude Call, say hello.
Hello, folks. Hi, Jerry. It's good to be with you.
So we named the show Podners. Okay, I got that from your Facebook, Claude. So, all right. So who wants to go first and tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing?
Well, I'm going to yield the floor to Claude, one, because he sort of had the original seed of the idea, and second, because this is his maiden voyage on Hamilton Radio, and I want to make a good one for him. So, Claude, take the wheel.
Okay, well, we have a podcast called 250 and Counting, 250 and Counting. And basically, for those of us of a certain age, you might go back to when you were a youngster and the bicentennial was absolutely everywhere, right? Everything was red, white, and blue. Everything was geared toward USA 200. And as we started crawling up toward the 250th anniversary of the United States, I thought, wouldn't it be cool to do the Bicentennial Minute in podcast form? And of course, we would push everything up 50 years. And so that's basically what we've got. It's a short form podcast. Every episode is anywhere between 2 to 3 minutes long. And we talk about what happened 250 years ago on any given day. And it's been a fun project for the two of us. We're hoping to get a little bit more exposure, a few more downloads. That would be a beautiful kind of thing. But it started a couple of years ago. I was working on a different podcast called How Good It Is, which is about pop music. And Mike approached me, if I recall, and said, "Hey, I've got this podcast going on about Gordon Lightfoot, and I was wondering if you'd like to come on the podcast." And I was like, "Yeah, that'd be great." So we did a joint podcast episode together, and he put his elements on his, and I put my elements on mine, and we each released our own episode. And then as the idea behind 250 and Counting started to gel in my head, I said, "Hey, Mike's a history teacher. He might be interested in working on this with me." So I approached him about that. He took to the idea immediately, which I was kind of glad to see. And so we've been working on it pretty steadily. I guess the work started in earnest, about a little over a year ago, I'm going to say, Mike?
Yeah, we started doing the research about this time last year, where we tried to figure out, okay, what happened on January 1st, 1775, January 2nd, 1775. I think everybody knows what happened on July 4th, 1776, but there were a lot of dates that, let's face it, the average person in the street doesn't know. And so we had to do quite a bit of digging to get those dates, and we got them all filled, and then we started recording the episodes, I think, in December of last year.
Right.
And we've been doing them. They're on every day of the week. And as Claude said, it's a cooperative effort. We take turns, and we also have some sort of adjunct voices. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's been something that we have just had an absolute blast with, and we're now about a quarter of the way through the Odyssey, and it has been just as fun as anything I've done behind a microphone.
Okay,
Yeah,
wait.
it really has. It's been a little bit of a stressful process from time to time because you are producing a daily podcast, and I tend to thrive under that kind of stress. So there are a lot of times when I'm recording my episode for tomorrow today, and so that that gets to be a bit much, but I got to give kudos to Mike because he did the overwhelming amount of the initial research just to plug in the events and the dates, and then the actual writing of the episode. It's down to us individually, so we can kind of put our own stamp of voice on it. Although we do follow we do follow a little bit of a format sheet so that there's some consistency from one episode to the
And
next.
in fairness, I also want to say that Claude has really been the producer in all of this. If I've done the library work, it's been Claude who's been putting the finishing touches on everything, making sure that things are squeaky clean, and then uploading the podcast. So we'd like to think that, because there's 3,000 miles between Claude's studio and my studio, but we make it work. We talk to each other pretty much every other day, and we Zoom with each other every 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And we're hoping that we'll be able to do more work with each other in the future.
So-
We hope to someday meet face to face.
So wait a minute, guys, I have a question. So I can get it with Mike being a history teacher and being intrigued with all this. What made you want to do this?
Well, I'm an educator as well. I'm a special education teacher in Baltimore, Maryland. And so my other podcast that I mentioned before, How Good It Is, it also has an educational bent to it. So it's the story behind the song. So, for instance, if you know a particular pop song, okay, you know the song, you like the song, but sometimes I wonder, like, what went into the creation of that song? What inspired the writer? What sort of, who was he writing about? That kind of thing. And so that's the thing that I go into, and that's what makes it a little bit different from, say, the tenor of Mike's Gordon Lightfoot podcast, Carefree Highway Revisited, in that he's got a little bit more of a fan's eye view of the material, where I have the story behind the song kind of thing. So yeah, it's basically based out of my desire to spout useless trivia at people.
Wait, so Claude, hold that thought for a minute. Producer, when we did a sound check with you, you didn't have your headphones on, and
I
then
did
you
not.
put them on. We're getting a little reverb.
Getting an echo. Yeah, getting an echo.
Really? Because I have my speakers off now, where I didn't previously.
Okay. Let's see what we could do here. All right, let's see.
Now my speakers are on and headphones are off.
Is that better, Gina?
Yeah, no echo. Yeah, it sounds good.
Okay.
How about that? Okay.
Okay, whatever
Okay.
works.
So now, so now, history. Let's talk about the history of all this first. All right. So now, you guys go way back and talk about like everything that went on back then, even prior, of course, to, the Declaration and all that kind of stuff. And how do I even ask you this question? Like, is it that intriguing to you guys?
It is.
Okay.
And it comes from being both history nerds, I think
Okay.
I probably am safe in saying that, and teachers. Okay, we know how to talk to people. We both love broadcasting. And so to us, it's a little bit like a detective story with us as the detective.
Okay, I love that.
Mm-hmm. I think another way of saying it is we can't talk about everything in a 3-minute podcast, but we talk about one event, whether it's well known or whether it's obscure. When we came up to April 19th, which was the Battle of Lexington and Concord. Okay, I think I'm probably safe in saying there's a whole lot of people who know, if they don't know that date, they know the poem, they know the event, they know the significance of those two locations. Okay. But the most recent episode that I did, or one of them, was when George Washington is riding from Philadelphia to Boston. He stops in New York to talk to some people who are really scared that he's going to become a new Napoleon. He's going to become a military dictator.
Spoiler alert, that's tomorrow's episode.
Okay, well, in any case, one that I did, and they so it's about that. And I think unless you are really into New York City history, you wouldn't have any idea that that happened. So we're dealing with probably one event a day. And we find either the one that is the most significant or maybe the only one that we can find because 250 years, records get lost, people don't write things down. So at times it's been kind of, okay, Claude, what happened today? I don't know. Let's see if we can find something. So that's kind of how the
Okay.
interest level comes.
Well, George Washington came through Hamilton, Mercer County, because we have a statue of him. So it's really cool.
Oh,
That
great.
was just, that was actually just a few days ago, in 1775. And that
Oh.
was, in fact, and as Mike mentioned, sometimes we have a couple of different things and we have to pick one. And unfortunately, that was the one that we let drop because we decided to stick with the New York City story.
Okay. Doc G, it's coming again. I'm not quite sure why. Can we turn him down a hair on our end?
See if that's any better.
Okay, talk, Claude.
All right. I think the other thing that fascinates me, as far as putting this thing together is, while most people know about, let's say, Lexington and Concord or the Battle of Bunker Hill, they don't necessarily understand the various events that led up to it.
Okay.
And sometimes what we're able to do is we're able to weave some of those pieces together over the course of several days so that we can say, well, this happened on this day, and that's going to lead into another thing that we're going to talk about in a couple of weeks. So this has given us an opportunity to kind of see the bigger picture of things too. And so I'm doing a lot more of things that I never thought I would be doing when I find myself saying, hey, remember when I talked about this thing on January 2nd? Well, it's coming back now. And so I'm actually able to pull the pieces of different episodes together and say, this is how this relates to this and how that relates to that. And it all came together on thus and such day. And that's always been a fun discovery for me as I'm doing these episodes.
So I have another question.
Sure.
From one of the episodes you guys have already done, because we don't want you to, spoil anything, tell us something that most of us would not know that you've already discussed.
You want to go first on that, Claude?
No, I'm going to let you go first.
Oh, okay. One of the ones that he was alluding to a minute ago was something called the gunpowder incident. And this happened in Virginia.
Okay.
And we actually devoted 4 episodes to this because it happened over the course of several days. And it was also just something we couldn't contain in a 3-minute episode if we'd wanted to. So we had the buildup of tension between the governor of Virginia and the colonists. And then we had, okay, there's news of Lexington and Concord gets to Virginia. What's going to happen? And then Patrick Henry rides to the town of Williamsburg, which was the colonial capital of Virginia, and says, okay, we're going to take your gunpowder before the English get it. And then we find out there's a deal struck and there's not much bloodshed, and Patrick Henry rides off to Philadelphia. And then we wrap up with the idea that the governor has to get out of town before he finds himself suddenly dead. So the continuity, it's almost, I don't want to say a saga, but it's certainly a continuous story that we had to break up. And unless you are in Virginia, and in particular Williamsburg, and in very particular colonial Williamsburg, you might not know anything about that. And that is another aspect of this, Jerry, is that we get to talk about what happens in all of the colonies, not just the things that show up in the history books. Okay, what happened in New York City or Boston or Philly or Baltimore, although we've already said not a ton happened during the Revolution in Baltimore. So it's nice to have that larger perspective and not just focus on the things that happen in the big cities.
Because back in school, they brought us to Williamsburg. We had those class trips. But
Yeah,
we were
here
young
too.
and didn't pay attention. And now, listening to you, it's pretty cool. So,
Mhm.
Claude, what would you like to share?
I think for me it would be that there were a lot more tea parties than I thought there were.
Yeah,
You know,
that's true.
everybody knows from the Boston Tea Party, which actually happened outside the scope of the show because we started with January 1st, 1775. Boston Tea Party happened before that. But then in February of 1775, there was the Edenton Tea Party, which took place in North Carolina. And that was actually the first major political event by women in
Oh,
in America.
oh,
So they said they weren't going to not just purchase tea, they weren't going to buy any British goods, and in that case, it meant a lot of fabric because they were making their own clothes. And um, so there was that. There was another tea party. Location is briefly escaping me where tea was thrown over and destroyed. Um, Never gets into the stories. And the other thing I learned is that a lot of these things, these boycotts and the destruction of tea and whatever else, and refusal to pay taxes, a lot of it didn't have a ton of impact on Britain from an economic standpoint, because we just didn't have the economic clout to really affect Britain because the British Empire was literally around the world at that point. But it was still just enough to annoy members of parliament so that when it came time to start seeking some form of reconciliation, and there were a lot of efforts to reach out and get the two countries back together somehow,
Yeah.
there were people in parliament who was like, no way, not happening. And they happened to be the people who really kind of controlled what was going on. So despite all these efforts to reconcile, there were some people who were just determined to let the chips fall where they may, which ultimately led to Lexington and Concord.
so Tea Party really wasn't a tea party.
No, there was a lot of tea involved, but
Yes,
there was stuff other than tea. Yeah.
yes, yes, yes.
That's right.
That's really cool. So, all right, Mike, so you're up. Anything, this is another question, okay?
Yeah.
Anything that you've already discussed that the people would really know about?
We've talked about The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. I
Okay.
think that's one that if you haven't read the, was it Longfellow?
Yes.
Yeah, it was Longfellow. If you haven't read the poem, I think most school children are exposed to it even today. But you do get the sense of what was going on. And we found that when we dug into it, we saw that it was a lot more involved. There was more of a backstory than just one guy on a horse waiting to see if there were going to be lanterns placed in a tower. Obviously, that happened, but we found out about who actually broke into that church and put the lights up in the steeple. We found out about the people who rode with Paul Revere. There were two people who accompanied him to
Oh,
at least part of the journey. We found out about his arrest, and the authorities had to let him go because they didn't see that what he was doing. They just wondered why is this guy riding around Massachusetts at this particular time. So everybody knew, I think, about Paul Revere. If they don't know the name, they've seen his face on a beer bottle. If they haven't seen the beer bottle, they know enough about the American Revolution.
yeah,
So I think everybody probably had a germ of it, Jerry, but they didn't necessarily know the whole
of
story. And so
course.
it was really satisfying for us to take this sort of thumbnail sketch and turn it into more of a mural, if I can use a metaphor. And I carefully picked an artistic metaphor there because I know that you were an art major.
That is so cool. All right, Claude, do you have a story that we all may know about that you've already discussed?
Um, yeah, Benedict Arnold.
Okay,
Again,
yes, come on.
everybody knows from Benedict Arnold, he's the traitor, he's the bad guy, da 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 da. But he wasn't at first. And and he was pretty well respected. Besides, we've just started to talk about him. We started in like mid to late April, and how he was involved with the Connecticut Foot Guards and how that turned into the capture of Fort Ticonderoga in upstate New York, and how he was involved with that. And he managed to get into other places too, very successfully. So we've started to touch on him. We'll talk about him more in the future until we get to the point where he actually starts to turn away from the colonies and toward England and the fallout that's involved there. So that was kind of cool learning that there was way more backstory to this guy than you think. He wasn't just some loyalist who pretended to be a patriot. He was a patriot, and something turned him around later on. So I think that wound up being a cool story. And then the other thing is, as Mike mentioned before, we're just getting into George Washington taking over the Continental Army, and George Washington feels like he kind of sprung out of nowhere. I mean, he was involved with the Virginia House of Burgesses, and that's nice too. But as a military commander, he didn't have a ton of experience. He was involved with the French and Indian War. He was involved in a battle that, frankly, we didn't win. And at the same time, like somebody said, hey, you know what? What about George Washington and as our commander? And the entire Continental Congress went, sure, let's get him. And even George himself was a little bit like, really? Me? But he took on the job. And in fact, he took it on for free, plus expenses. And so as we mentioned earlier, he is now, as we speak, en route from Philadelphia up toward Boston. And as of tomorrow, he'll be in New York City.
So I have a history question for both of you.
Okay.
All right. So back in the day, I've done a lot of traveling. I've been all over the world. And I even went to Russia in the 80s and to China, had machine guns pointed at me in both places at the walls. I'm crazy. And great experiences. So I was in Europe, and there was a family on our tour. And I was in my 20s, and the sons were in their 20s. And one was a history teacher down south. And he said to me, because we all became very good friends, and he said to me, you know, your history books up north are different than ours down south. They say different things. And he shared some things with me that blew my mind, like slavery. So we depict it as completely horrendous, and they don't. Okay, there's things in their history books that claim it wasn't as bad as we're saying it is. So my question is this: all this stuff that you guys are learning and reading, like, are you able to distinguish between, well, maybe this really didn't happen or that really did? Like, how do you do that?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
And actually, today's episode provides a really good view into that, because, yeah, there are a lot of times when we are putting our episodes together and we have to look at a number of different sources. But the thing is, you know, as they say, history gets written by the winners. And so
Yep.
you really do have to think about the lens that the writer is going through when he writes the piece that he writes. And so some things are faulty memory, some things are political motivation, some things are, you know, just something else. And as it happens, today's episode is about somebody who was there at the Battle of Bunker Hill, who wrote a letter to his mother just a couple of days later.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
a very detailed account of what happened. So and this is just some guy writing to mom, hey mom, this is what happened. He did this 4-page letter about all the events that happened at the
Oh
Battle
my
of
gosh, that's
Hill.
amazing.
Mailed it off to his mother in where was she? Somewhere in Rhode Island, Newport, Rhode Island. All right, from the Cambridge area in Massachusetts. And mom got the letter. She read it. She loved it. She saved it. And the letter basically disappeared for 100 years until one of his descendants found it in a box.
Oh,
It was literally 100 years later. It was June of 1875 that this descendant found the letter and said, "Oh, this might be interesting." So what you have is a document from somebody who was there, who had no real agenda, just wanted to give the news to mom of what happened to me. I'm fine. I survived the battle, that kind of thing. And so it's probably the best contemporary account of probably anything in the American Revolution. It's a fascinating piece. But yeah, we do have to think about that a lot. Like, you know, what were they thinking when they wrote this particular piece. And yeah, there have been times when we've had to reconcile a couple of conflicting pieces of work.
First of all, that letter,
Mhm.
that just gave me chills that they found that letter. That's amazing. Oh my gosh, that's
If you
incredible.
go to the website, it is available through the Massachusetts Historical Society's website. And so what I did was I provided it through a link to from our website, 250 and counting.com. So if
Very
you look
cool.
at today's episode, you can get an opportunity to click yourself over to see the letter itself.
Yeah,
Okay,
there's a plug for you.
so listen, do me a favor and text me that info, either one of you, because I really want to see it. Okay, so believe it or not, I do love history. Okay?
Oh, I believe it. Yeah.
I wasn't really, I mean, my grades, I got A's and B's no matter what, because I just memorized and remembered and did what I had to do. But I didn't really focus when I was younger in history class until I got older, and that's when I started doing all this traveling to find out really what was going on. And it's amazing and mind-boggling. And I want to share one more thing with you. So I had a woman named Ahidika. She was from a tribe, and she actually flew in years ago and came live in my studio. And the Doctrine of Discovery, she brought me to watch. And it's about Washington with the Native Americans. And it's crazy, really sad. But yeah, there's so much history back there, and with everything that really went on, and truth and not truth and craziness. So what you guys are doing is awesome. I mean, bringing all this stuff to light is amazing.
You know, Claude kind of talked about the idea of corroborating and the idea we can't just rely on one source
Yeah.
for anything, any one source. We have to look at other ones. That's, what professional historians do. And in as much as we are professionals and historians, and I guess that makes us professional historians, that is, a good portion of our craft. Another example of that, although we talked about this a little bit on the podcast, is who fired the first shot at Lexington?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
Oh,
But there are a number of different witnesses. And so what we have done both for the podcast and for our teaching is that we've had to look at the testimonies of these witnesses. Okay, where did they come from? What was their job? What angle did they have? What kind of source is this? Is this a diary that nobody expects to be read? Is this a letter to somebody that has expectations of the person who's writing it? Is this somebody who has very strong feelings about the colonies rebelling
okay.
either for it or against it? And then another one that we have to look at, and Claude alluded to this a minute ago, was the Boston Tea Party. I mean, the legend that has surrounded the Boston Tea Party is, well, all the colonists dressed up as Native Americans. No, they didn't, at least not in any convincing way. Well, it happened in the dead of night. No, it didn't. It happened in broad daylight, that people were doing this. So there's a certain amount of straining of the historical higgledy-piggledy that we have to go through. But we also find that really, really satisfying, because if we can do that and then come out with these daily podcasts, we can say, wow, we managed to condense this and hopefully get to some of the truth in 180 seconds. And how can you beat that?
Wait, so you really only do 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not 5? I'm just curious.
Because bicentennial minute.
Because what?
I think it was, I think probably 50% of it is that the original idea was based on this bicentennial minute, which I believe was on television.
Yeah.
In 75, 76. The other part of it, Jerry, and let's face it, we've all been around long enough to know that, and in broadcasting long enough to know that listeners' attention spans have not gotten any better. So we figure that if we can say it in a couple of minutes, it's probably trying to condense it any further would be very, very difficult, and we'd have to sound like we had had 12 cups of coffee because we had to talk so fast. Or it would be to the point where somebody would be driving around there and say, again, I'm not listening, or I'm just going to skip to the next thing, or whatever. So we thought that 2.5 to 3 minutes was probably a good happy medium.
See, I would do 5 because this is how I hear it. I hear, oh my gosh, they're done already? Wait, I could have heard a little bit more. 5 minutes is nothing, guys.
But see how if you say, oh, they're done already, I'll have to tune in tomorrow to find out what's next.
All
So
right.
there is a certain psychology, I think.
Okay,
Claude, can you
gotcha.
add anything to that?
No, other than, I mean, I'll tell you what, I like my other podcast, I script out as well. And there's a lot of work in the writing too, frankly, and a lot of extra research. And the other thing is there are some times with some of these events, you can't come up with 5 minutes worth of material.
Oh, okay, okay.
So there are some times when I could, yeah, easily have gone on for another couple of minutes. But for the most part, there are times when I'm kind of, I can sense myself just sort of padding it out a little
Okay.
bit. And I don't really want to do that. I want to
Okay.
get to the heart of the story and go. And sure, as Mike says, leave them wanting more.
That's right. And tomorrow they'll hear their, okay, very cool.
Hmm.
Okay. How can people like give them all your info, how they can reach out, find you, all that, everything?
Well, we're at the website, and I'm going to make sure that I spell this out the correct way, is 250andcounting.com. And I should say that it is the number 250 and then the words and counting.com. So you got 3 numbers and then you got a couple of words, no spaces, no dashes, anything like that. That's where we have the archive of all the episodes. And it's where every single day we put that day's episode. So that's the URL. Claude, where else can people find it?
Well, we are on most of your favorite podcatchers. So if you like the Apple Podcasts, if you like, whatever you use to listen to your podcasts, it is likely available in there. We're in probably all the podcast directories at this point, so you should be able to find us without too much trouble
Okay.
by just searching out the show's name, 250 and Counting. And what else? Well, we are on X, Twitter, as 250 and Counting, and we are also on Blue Sky, and I believe we're 250 and Counting Pod there. Am I correct there?
Yes.
Okay. And then, of course, you can find us if you're so inclined on the Facebook.
Yeah,
Look up
each
our
one-
names yeah,
Each one of us, Claude Call, Mike Messner.
yeah.
So, okay. So, Mike, do your students watch it?
You know, I've thought about using it in my history classes.
need
The
to.
The thing is, yeah, I'll bet. The thing is that many times the podcasts are going into some real specific detail. And when you're in a survey class like I teach, where we've got 9 months to get through the whole story from 1608 to the end of the Obama administration, it's very hard to fit in the time. So if I were teaching just a course in colonial history, then I would definitely use it. As it is, I'm going to have to think about, maybe I'll use an episode or two as a teaching tool
You should.
for key events as we study the revolution. But at the moment, I'm still trying to figure that. So check with me in December and I'll let you know what I come up with.
Because I have something cool to share with you. So
Yeah.
I got a message, and I remember Doc G about them watching my show. The Geri Petito show is being taught in Mercer County College.
Wow.
No kidding.
Listen, I was blown away. Okay, I get a message from a student saying, "Oh my gosh, you're the Geri Petito. We're being taught about you in Mercer County College in my class." Okay, so that's why I think what you're doing is amazing. I think once a month you should show them one. Because here's why. All right? When you're young and you're in school and it's history, honestly, it goes in one ear, out the other. We study what we have to, we remember what we have to for the moment, hopefully do well on our tests, but then we forget about it. If you're presenting it to them that way, they'll never forget that. I'm just putting it out there.
What do you think, Claude? Sounds like a solid thing to try.
It does. And actually, I've been kind of kicking around the idea, and I have not approached Mike about this yet, so he's hearing it for the first time.
Okay.
Okay.
Is in Maryland, students have certain expectations, and if they want to get a high school diploma, okay, so they have to get a certain number of credits, they have to pass certain tests. But the other thing they have is something called service learning hours, where they have to do something for the good of the community. So it could be a neighborhood cleanup, it could be, I don't know, shoveling walks for some elderly neighbor, it could be helping out at a local daycare. But one of the things I thought about is I could get my kids to earn service learning hours by writing episodes. And so I talked to a social studies teacher at my school to say, look, I've got this project going on. I wonder if you might be interested in doing this for your guys as a means of learning some of the U.S. history and at
Wow.
the same time getting the kids to earn service learning hours. And then whether we got them to record it, well, that would be a different issue. But to do the research, to write the episodes, and actually, get that kind of time together. And I think one of the things I've learned as an educator is that a lot of times when you get one student to teach another, the student who teaches learns at least as much as the student who is taught.
Oh,
Because
big time.
they have
Yeah.
to know the material cold in order to help the other student. And so I think it would be a great way to immerse our students in some of this material.
Very cool. What made you come up with 250 and counting?
That was Mike. That was all Mike.
Oh, Mike. All right.
We had a whole bunch of different names that we were tossing around, and I just thought that was the punchiest, and it also sounded more genuine because it is, we're coming up on 250 years of this republic as of next year, and most republics, let's face it, don't last that long. So it's really important. One thing that I did want to point out is that this is not completely a two-man show. We
Okay.
do have two other people who are helping us with
Okay.
that. And I'll talk about one and Claude will talk about the other. Serena Gaylord, who was a student where I teach and who I worked with a little bit when she was a student at Los Altos High School, is doing one of the women's voices because we don't purport to be good actors in doing female impersonations, either Claude or I. And she is a fantastic voice actress. She's majoring in dance at Scripps College. And she's also helping me out with an audio drama project or two that I'm working on that we can talk about a little bit later. And then we have another female counterpart that Claude will tell you about.
Yeah, her name is Lorene Childs, and she is actually, she has a bachelor's in history as well. And so she is always looking to expand her knowledge of historical events and figures. And we got her to record, a couple of short pieces and then one full episode. We're hoping to get Gabby to record another full episode for the end of this month. Not to Serena rather, to record the full episode for the end of this month.
Very cool. So I'm going to read a poem out of my book, and then you'll each have the mic again. All right.
Okay.
And I'm going to be reading a poem called Utilizing Gifts and Talents, and that's what you guys are doing. I like to read this poem because people message me all the time. I wish I could sing like them. I wish I could write poetry like you. I wish I could dance like them. And they're going to be messaging me about this show, all right? This is cool. And I have a lot of friends who are teachers, all right? So I'm going to actually send them this podcast.
Thank you.
So, utilizing gifts and talents. We are born with talents. We are born with drive, with different gifts to help us thrive. I knew early on I was born to draw and paint, to also write poetry, and to talk without restraint. Our gifts and talents should all be used. God's gift to us, not be abused. We can go far in life for sure, using our gifts to go on tour. All our talents should be used to create ourselves and more, but then our job's to share them, to even up the score, like you guys are doing. You see, in life, what's needed is not just for ourselves. Once our gifts are mastered, take them off the shelves. A living we can make by spreading them around. not just for the money, but to spread a peaceful sound. So don't take for granted the gifts you're given. Go out and spread the joy. Our gifts are not to be held back for us to self-destroy. Put your efforts forth. Do not hesitate. All your talents, my friend, are never second rate. Never hold them back or you will surely die. Maybe not in body, but your soul will cry. Our gifts were made to share, our talents made to soar. Go through life enlightened, then you can roar. Be proud of who you are. Be happy you're alive. Once again, my friend, your gifts will help you thrive. By putting efforts forth, not keeping them at bay, your name, 250 and counting, baby, will live forever, forever and a day. So go through life excited for what you sure can give to yourself and others is our reason to live. Our grave will be quite lonely, but our legacy lives on. So make sure people smile with the breaking dawn. And that's what you guys are doing with this. Because
Beautiful.
what you're doing is bringing the truth to light, okay, about stuff that most of us don't even know happened. Okay, so it's very, very cool. I love what you guys are doing. So I'm going to give each one of you back the mic. We still have a few minutes left. We're fine. To say anything else you're doing other than what you're doing together. So Claude, you take the mic first.
Well, before I do that, can I just reflect on the poem briefly?
Oh, okay.
It is because I think the other thing is, and you've kind of brought this up before, is like there are a lot of times when people will look at a thing and say, I really can't do that. I don't know if I'm good enough,
There you go.
that sort of thing. Now, when I was in college, I spent a lot of time in college radio, all right, at the dearly departed WBAU out of Adelphi University. And, I really, Gary, it's a bug, right? It gets under your skin and it sticks with you. And, I just really wasn't in a position when I graduated to pursue that career. And so it was one of those things that just kind of like nagged at me for years and years and years. And then podcasting happened. And I was like, this is kind of cool. Like, this is not remarkably different. I could probably do this. And sure enough, there was like one of my colleagues from WBAU had himself a podcast, and I was like, shoot, if he can do it, I can certainly do it, And so I asked him, I was like, how did you get this started? And da 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 da. He told me about this, and so I pulled my materials together. I got my stuff, and I put together my first podcast. So it's never too late to
Nope.
get started on something.
That's right.
And I think that's one of the lessons I've learned from this is that you can always take that passion, and maybe it's not going to go in the direction you expect it to, but it's going to go somewhere. And I tell people all the time when I'm talking to my students about what they want to do after school, and I poll the adults in the room, and I'm like, raise your hand if you're doing the thing you thought you were going to be doing when you're 18. Every time, 0 hands go up. You know what I'm saying? And so you don't know what the road is that's going to get you where you're going. So if you have something in mind that you want to do, go for it.
Do it.
You have no idea where it's going to go. As far as other projects, I keep mentioning my other podcast, How Good It Is. I'm in a little bit of a break right now, but I want to resume this summer. But there's something like 175 episodes for you to enjoy in the meantime. And that's over at howgooditis.com. And then I'm also involved with another podcast where I take on a little bit more of a sidekick role. It's called Words and Movies, and that's at wordsandmovies.com. And that is me and my other podcasting partner, Sean Gallagher. He and I choose a couple of films and we find a common thread between the two. And sometimes it's simple as that they were both science fiction films from 1968. And sometimes it's the directors have the same last name, and sometimes it's something else. But it's a lot of fun for me to work on. So
Very cool.
so those are my two big projects.
Very cool. Okay,
Besides this
Mike,
one.
we have a few minutes left for you. Tell us what else you're working on.
Well, I wanted to start by kind of tying into what Claude was saying. I grew up listening to old time radio and to records and cassettes where you had various voices playing different roles. And I had always wanted to do that, but as Claude also mentioned, okay, broadcasting wasn't what it used to be by the time I came of age, but now I get to do it. And Like many other things in my life, I'm overdoing it because I've got 6 different projects that I'm working on, including 250 and counting. 2 of them are here on Hamilton Radio, and I have been on Hamilton Radio so much with your help and with Doc G's help that I feel like I should have an office there with a,
There you go.
because I have, been on quite a bit. Musical Murders podcast, which my buddy Steph Garcia and I are doing together, and which we also did for you, Jerry, on a different network. In the President's podcast, which is a behind-the-scenes look at the audio drama that I'm producing in the President's service. That, by the way, we're going to head into production in the next few days for season 4. So that will be, the show itself will be coming out probably September of this year. I'm continuing to do Writing the West, and you had my collaborator Rick Stieber on your show a while back, and I'm still doing that and having a lot of fun with that, and that's appearing on some radio stations out in Oregon and Washington. And then I haven't quit my day job, so to speak, which is Carefree Highway Revisited.
There you go.
We've just finished the 4th season of that. We're on hiatus, and I'll be starting season 5. My first guest will be Adele Chalifou up in Quebec, and we will be talking about Gordon Lightfoot's song Softly. So I'm doing probably too much podcasting, but on the other hand, I love every minute of it, and I'm very lucky to be doing something that I really love.
Yes.
Again, not for the money, but for the fun, the joy, and the legacy.
Well, I want to thank you guys for such a great interview and what you're doing, honestly. You got to bring it into the schools. This is so cool. Message me the info. I'm going to check you guys out and see what I don't know, because I probably don't know most of it, okay? I'll be like, oh, I heard of that. Oh, I know that name. Oh, my God, I didn't know that, okay? So this is very cool. So, Doc G, do you want to say anything?
I love what you guys are doing. I just tell you real quick, I'm a historical tour guide of 1730 house and a 1840 house, and I've learned a lot about history. And Jerry's right. When you do history in school, you really don't understand or learn too much. It's when you get older, you absorb it, and it helps you understand the whole history of what's going on. But what you guys are doing is awesome. So just keep on doing what you're doing. Mike, I messaged you, so message me back when you get a chance. We got some things we can talk about. Some of them podcasts should also be on Hamilton Radio, Claude, because of our audience, and we've been in for 30 years. Yeah. So that would definitely help you a little bit, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I would not complain too loudly if we got actual broadcast going on.
Very cool.
Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you, Doc
Thanks,
G.
Gene.
Thank you so much.
So guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I mean, it was amazing. So now, guys, we're going to close out with a different theme song, okay, that Robert Sweeney created through AI for me. And it's so pretty. It's not silly like my first one. All right, Doc G, take us out.
Welcome to the stage where stories untold, candid moments captured, memories unfold. Gary's got the vibes, a soothing flow. Come sit back, relax, let the good times glow. Jazz in the air, let it take you away. Welcome to the Geri Petito Show, where every heartbeat and every note flow. Jazz melodies weaving through the night. Together we'll shine. Everything feels right. Deep conversations where the heart finds a voice. Together we laugh. Sometimes we rejoice. Tales of adventure, the rhythms embrace. In each note a journey, feel the space. Step into the light, let the music. Welcome to the Geri Petito Show, where every heartbeat and every note flow. Jazz melodies, weaving through the night. Together we'll shine, everything feels right. So tune in now, let the magic start. Geri's podcast, a place for your art.